week closer to the Grey Cup. Hi there, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm going to be a little later than planned to do my videos 3 and 4 on the road to the Grey Cup for the 2023 CFL Playoffs, but life, work, responsibilities gets in the way, and it felt like a long week, so this video will be posted on the day of the playoff games. But with the task at hand, this is video 3. Let's preview the East Division Final, where we're going to have some deja vu, or as the French always like to say, hey, that already happened. What I mean is, well, this video and the next video, where I'll preview the West Final, same teams, same matchups. And this is still the case with the East Final, as the Toronto Argonauts. They are going to play the Montreal Alouettes for the rights to go to the Grey Cup next Sunday in Hamilton, Ontario, at Tim Hortons Field. So the East Final will be on Saturday, November the 11th. This will be at BMO Field, and all indications that we're hearing, over 25,000 tickets have been sold for this game. I know Toronto's been a tougher draw in the CFL the last few years, but I'm also hearing a lot of Montreal fans are making the trip, but it's nice to see. This will be a 1 p.m. kickoff at Mountain Time, or 3 p.m. Eastern. This is where the game will be played. So Montreal and Toronto, lots of classic matchups in the hockey, but let's have it football style. So before I break down the matchup, how did we get here? Well, last week in the East semifinal, well, obviously the Montreal Alouettes won against the Hamilton Tiger-Cats. It was a pretty convincing win for the Montreal Alouettes, as they won 27-12, and Toronto had the bye. So it's going to be a Montreal-Toronto first round, or East Final, I should say. So if we take a quick look at the numbers, who stood out in the game for the box score, well, for Montreal, it was Cody Fajardo. That was a quarterback. He was 15 for 23, 212 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And William Stanback, he had a big game on the ground, as he ran for 95 yards and 18 carries, averaging 5.3 yards carry. And then Tyler Snead was the lead receiver. He had 2 catches for 50 yards, but Austin Mack and Jake Hardy each received 2 touchdowns. And then on the defensive back, he had Rich Stubblefield. He had 7 tackles. So, and then Mark DeHoy, if I said the name right, had the interception. So that's the quick numbers for Montreal. On the outside ball was Matthew Schultz, who threw for 144 yards, 13 for 23 with 1 interception. Interestingly, Bo did actually play in this game, but not with 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter when the game was out of hand. James Butler was the lead rusher for Hamilton. He had 83 yards on 13 carries for 6 yards, 4 yards average. And then Tim Godwin was the lead receiver, as well as Tom Kalsker. Each had 36 yards receiving. And then Jameer Thurman was the leading tackler. He had 7 tackles and a sack. So that's the quick numbers for the Alouettes and the Tiger-Cats from the East semifinal. So how did we get here? When you look at the records between these two teams, you can say there actually is quite a disparity when looking at this being the matchup for the East Final, and it's the top 2 teams in the East Division. Well, the Toronto Argonauts, they had a 16-2 record. First in the East Division, first time a team finished with 16 wins in the CFL since the 1989 then named Edmonton Eskimos. However, they did get upset by the Saskatchewan Roughriders that year, so could history be on the side for Montreal, or could brutality face the Toronto Argonauts? Well, the Montreal Alouettes, they were 11-7 for second in the East Division, but I did see the interesting stat that Montreal was 11-0 versus teams not the Lions, Bombers, or Argonauts. And then when you break down the records even more, Toronto was a perfect 9-0 at home. And they were also a perfect 10-0 versus the East Division. So this is really going to stack the numbers in Toronto's favor. Well, the Montreal Alouettes, they actually were 6-3 on the road, so they were slightly better on the road than they were at home this year. And they were 7-3 versus the East, so that's the records looking for each team coming in. Clearly, the Toronto Argonauts were the more superior team. Now, when it comes to the season series, these two teams played each other 3 times during the regular season. Well, the first time went back in Week 6. This game was in Montreal, but the Toronto Argonauts won the first game 35-27. And then Week 14, this game was in Toronto, and the Toronto Argonauts won this one convincingly 39-10, and those two teams played again the week later to wrap up the season series, and the season series went to the Toronto Argonauts. This game was in Montreal, but Toronto won this one 23-20, so it was a close game for Week 15, but ultimately the Toronto Argonauts won the series 3-0 in the season. Now, this part of the video, we'll take a look at playoff history. I always like to look at the previous 3 playoff games between these two teams. We don't have to go too far back for the last time these two teams played, as I mentioned the deja vu, or hey, that already happened. Well, these two teams played last year at the East Final in Toronto, and it was the Toronto Argonauts. I mean, they are the defending Grey Cup champions, so obviously they had to win the East Final, which they did. 34-27 just last year. And then you had to go further back because Montreal and Toronto, they took turns missing the playoffs. So you got to go back to the 2012. Once again, this is the East Final, and this game was in Montreal. But Toronto actually won that game to go home for the 100th Grey Cup, as they won 27-20 on the road. And then in 2010, this was the year that the Montreal Alouettes still had Anthony Calvillo, and the Toronto Argonauts had a little bit of a resurgence in the 2010 Eastern Final. But this game was in Montreal, or in Montreal, I should say. The Montreal Alouettes, they defeated the Toronto Argonauts 48-17. So to playoff history, more recently with the Toronto Argonauts, but go further back, each teams took their turns winning. When it comes to the last playoff win, well, the Toronto Argonauts being the defending Grey Cup champions, and they had a bye to the East Final. Their last win was last year's Grey Cup, the 109th Grey Cup in Regina, as the Toronto Argonauts, they defeated the Winnipeg Blue Bombers 24-23. That was considered an upset, because Winnipeg looked poised to three-peat. In that game, each team's had a blocked field goal in the final 3 minutes, something I've never seen before in a championship football game. And then the Montreal Alouettes' last playoff win, well, obviously that was last week when they defeated the Hamilton Tiger-Cats at the East semifinal, 27-12 over the Hamilton Tiger-Cats. Now, who has the edge? Well, we can be a little quick on this one, as quarterback, running back, receiver, offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, return game, and the kicking game. That's all going to go to the Toronto Argonauts. They got Chad Kelly, who is the better quarterback between Cody Fajardo. Yeah, Montreal has William Stanback, but they have A.J. Ouellette, running back for the Toronto Argonauts. Then they still have this Andrew Harris guy to fill in. Not bad for Xavier's career. And then you have like Tavares Daniels and Curly Gittins. Not Curly Gittins, but Tavares Daniels is one of the lead receivers for the Toronto Argonauts. And then, despite the offensive line taking some more procedure penalties, but they're the big reason why Chad Kelly is able to get, holes for A.J. Ouellette. The only advantage that the Montreal Alouettes have is the defensive backs. So that could pose a challenge for the Toronto Argonauts. But this game all favors the Toronto Argonauts up and down. This has definitely been one of the best CFL teams that I've ever seen. And then I shorten the list when it comes to this team will win if because it's pretty much one-sided. I mean, Toronto's favored to win by 11 points in this one. I mean, Toronto, they just continue their total team dominance, just keep doing what they've been doing. But I'd say Montreal could win this one as if their defensive backs could put some doubt in the head of Chad Kelly and went over to turnover battle and cashed in early. And as you can see in the Week 15 game, it was a close one, which I recall. I think that one came down to a last-second field goal. And I'm going to say Boris Beatty definitely is a more established veteran over Cote, which I believe he is back for the Montreal Alouettes. But I'm going to say you might already figure out my prediction that this could be a big, ugly win or a close game, depending on a few things change throughout the factors between both teams. So with this game being outside, we'll look at the weather forecast, and it should be decent considering we're in November in Canada. They're forecasting the high during the day, a mix of sun and cloud, and a high of 5 degrees, and then a few clouds, low of -4. So that is the weather forecast. So now this is prediction time, and give you my confidence. So this is where I'll bring in the Wiz Smart Bulb. So if I were to pick the Montreal Alouettes to win, this would be the color for the Montreal Alouettes. Or if I were to pick the Toronto Argonauts, I'll use the darker shade of blue. You know, they're more of a lighter shade of blue, but in case if we have a Toronto Winnipeg Grey Cup, I need 2 different blues to do this part of the video. So who do I think they're going to win? Is it going to be the Montreal Alouettes? Will they pull off an upset, or will it all go to the favor with the Toronto Argonauts? So let's just spin around the color wheel. Just who do I have? Is it Toronto, Montreal, Toronto, Montreal? Well, I am going to say it's going to be the Toronto Argonauts. I think we'll win this one, and I'm going to say my score prediction is I think there'll be a lot of offense on both sides, but I'm going to say the Toronto Argonauts are going to win this one 42-25, and my confidence in this pick is 75%. So obviously, whoever wins this game will be off to the 110th Grey Cup at Tim Hortons Field in Hamilton, Ontario, and this game will be on Sunday, November the 19th. It'll be a 4 p.m. kickoff. Montreal, they're looking to make it back to the Grey Cup. I think it was the last time they were in the Grey Cup was the last time they won it, which was in 2010. Or the Toronto Argonauts, they are looking to get back to the Grey Cup. So what do you think of this matchup between the Toronto Argonauts and the Montreal Alouettes? We're going to be doing it all again in 2023. Except I'm going to say the Toronto Argonauts, they look like they're the mightier team. But the other factor in this game as well could be is that we knew pretty much since, I think they clinched first in the East Division, I think a week before Labor Day. So we pretty much knew the end of August that the Toronto Argonauts were going to be hosting the East Finals. So they have been trying to manage their rest versus rust battle, but that could come also in play today. And could Montreal have that it factor and pull off a big upset? We'll see. So I had to close out and say, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans' journey, just make sure you hit like, subscribe, as I mostly do talk Calgary sports on my channel. I've done this on the road to the Grey Cup series for the last few years, but this year I'm trying to get all 5 games in. Last year I just was feeling a little sicker, but this week just felt like a long week and just didn't get the video made till now. And I have my other social media links down in the description below. So as I say, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, and I'll make my preview for the West Final, which will have the Winnipeg Blue Bombers hosting the BC Lions, so you can see that video for that preview. So Thanks for watching.